Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Crimson Cast Live immediately after the game. We wanted to keep this under wraps because we didn't know if we were going to have a spot for it, but we do. I am Galen Clavio. I am live from Kinnick Stadium. He is Scott Caulfield. He is live from Westfield, Indiana. And Scott, Indiana somehow defies its own DNA from a program history perspective and pulls out a game that they could have very easily lost. 20-15, the final score here from Kinnick Stadium, a game that Iowa really forced Indiana to play at their pace the entire game. But the Hoosiers find a way to get it done. A tremendous throw and catch from Fernando Mendoza to Elijah Surratt in the waning moments. And then one of the weirdest last four downs I think I've ever seen from an officiating perspective in the history of college football. Indiana ends up giving up a safety because you just couldn't trust the officials to actually let the clock wind down. Scott, we got a ton to talk about. First of all, great to see you, my friend. How you doing?
A couple things. First off, I know you're live there, so you haven't seen the updates. I'm just reading this right now. Now that we've won, Kinnick is no longer a hard place to play at.
Oh,
just so you know, like I'm losing my voice. Kinnick is not a tough stadium. It's not a tough road environment. Iowa's not a good team. Just so you know, all those things are now true. And like it'd be nice to see us win a true road game. Man, that was such a big boy man's victory. That was huge. And Mendoza just stood in the pocket and made some great throws. And for those of you guys who were there, you could hear it at the end of the game, all the IU fans cheering and all that. So good job by everybody.
We are going to talk about the game. This is not going to be a tremendously long live show because I got to get on the road and drive back to Bloomington tonight. But we wanted,
and the rest still might come back out and have another down, like just because like he's not Mendoza hasn't kneeled yet.
Scott his voice may just give out at any second here. But no, before we dive any further, just a quick reminder: we're brought to you by Home Field Apparel, your place to go for the finest in college fashions. Home Field Apparel. They should make a shirt about this game at some point, and that throw and catch from Surratt or to Mendoza to Surratt there.
Or the kneel was good.
Yeah, the kneel was good. I like that a lot. No, but let's dive into this one. This was a game that started off about as well as it possibly could for IU. Great defensive play. Isaiah Jones pressuring. Amari Farrell picks the ball off, and then a couple of plays later, it's Mendoza to Cooper, and it looks like, wow, Indiana's going to be on easy street for this one. But they let Iowa start to dictate terms. And if there's one thing Iowa loves to do, it's dictate terms, and they did absolutely that. Iowa's offense struggled throughout the course of the game, and yet Indiana couldn't really take advantage of it. The defense for Indiana started to get worn out, and Indiana's play calling was really, really suspect, only putting the ball up 8 times in the air.
A lot of runs, just really, really, really conservative.
Yeah, it was a very puzzling set of play calls. Now, you could certainly understand to some degree while watching the game because Indiana's pass protection wasn't really where you'd like to see it, especially on the right side. Khalil Benson really struggling. Now, Iowa's defensive line, as we talked about in some of the pregame podcasts, is a very good offensive or defensive line. You knew they were going to get some pressure, especially on the edges. But Indiana was weirdly conservative. It's a complaint that you had against Indiana the entirety of the Ohio State game last year, most of the Notre Dame game until the very end. And it was disappointing, to say the least, to see them continuing to fall into that same trap. And
you think it's a noise thing? You think it's based on the loudness?
I think it was a combination of things. I mean, I think Indiana was having decent success in the running attack. It's just that when they needed to pick up plays, they just didn't seem confident that they were going to get the blocking that they needed. And
some of those fourth down plays were just dead on arrival.
Yeah, well, and I think this is something that Indiana is really going to have to try to shore up as they move forward. I mean, they got lucky, frankly, that they weren't made to pay more for the poor choices. That first fourth down play that we saw early on in the game, you come out, Iowa's got 9 in the box. At that point, you either take a timeout, bring the field goal unit on, or you audible to some kind of a 3-yard sit-down route. Like, it shouldn't have been that hard. They did it again at midfield in the second half. And honestly, I'm sitting up here in the press box and I'm watching all this go down, and I'm saying to myself, like, Indiana, frankly, is almost playing a style and making decisions in these moments in a way that you couldn't blame you'd have to say like they incurred the loss at that point if they
Yeah,
actually ended up
I agree.
moving forward with that. And you think about the way that things unfolded from there. Iowa just kept doing little Iowa things throughout the course of the second half. You go down the list, and Indiana just couldn't really get anything done. We'll do recite the drives later. We have a special surprise on that, but Indiana forced into a ton of punts. Iowa wasn't really doing a whole lot themselves offensively, but after an early fourth down failure in the fourth quarter, they did get a field goal, put Iowa up 13-10. But the one thing I will say, as many complaints as you could have about the play calling at various times, when Indiana needed to make plays, they did so later on in the contest. After Iowa kicked that field goal, I think most IU fans were feeling like the moment had been lost. They go on an 8-play, 49-yard drive. They get a field goal of their own,
which was huge, just a huge play.
Yeah. And so, you look at the stats overall. We'll kind of flash these up first before we talked about the drives. Fernando Mendoza, 13 of 23 in this game, 233 yards, a 10.1 yards per attempt average, which is really good. Almost like they probably should have thrown the ball more. 2 touchdowns, obviously had the 1 pick, which looked like it was going to be the game decider. Roman Hemby, great game running the ball overall, statistically 15 plays, 86 yards, about almost 6-yard per carry average. The rest of the running backs really did struggle. Elijah Surratt, 6 catches, 132 yards, and a touchdown. Omar Cooper Jr., 4 catches, 55 yards. They were the only Indiana players that caught more than 1 ball. And then you look defensively, Isaiah Jones had a half sack, half tackle for loss, 8 total tackles, 4 solo. Aiden Fisher, 5 solo tackles. And of course, you got to talk about the 2 interceptions, Amari Farrell and Lewis Moore, not EJ Williams, despite what the box score says. There were so many little things, though, down the stretch. And I mean, obviously, you look at those last couple of drives, and you got to talk about the loss for Iowa of their quarterback, Mark Gronowski, who went down with a twisted ankle, didn't come back into the game. They have to put Hank Brown in, and Brown just wasn't really effective enough to take advantage like you would normally see Iowa be able to take advantage in those kind of circumstances.
Yeah, no, I mean, and from the defense, it was just a full team effort on the defense, and when they had to step up, they really did. And it was, they held Iowa to that tough 44-yard field goal that they missed. I mean, they damn near blocked that one too. Like they had a complete number 0, I think, got through the line and was right there. But that was at a point where you were one more first down away from Iowa just kneeling this thing out and kicking a field goal, which I guess could have been easier. Maybe they miss it, maybe they don't. But no, this wasn't fun. This was definitely a lot of
I can verify at the stadium, it was not fun if you were an IU fan.
But you wonder, is this the kind of game? It's like, does this get everybody over the hump? Fans, the team. It's like, all right, we've kind of stared into the abyss and we've come back. We've won one of these tough road games. And it's like, we know that if we need to, let's not cheat death this closely every time. But, can we get, we know we can do it. And when we need to, it's like, dude, you just got to go back to Mendoza. It's like some of those throws where he stayed in the pocket. The last one to Surratt was great. He knew the blitz was coming. He got rid of it quickly. I'm thinking of the drive before that where he had, he just got obliterated and threw it to Surratt, and Surratt got it. But even, the drive where they scored, I think it was second or third down, Mendoza just has the pocket and he just hits Surratt back shoulder, like just a perfect pass. I mean, he was on it and he stayed in the pocket and he looked awesome. And, he was, the only thing that was bugging me is he was taking these runs and it's like, dude, you're getting hit really hard. Like you don't need to be running so much.
Yeah. I mean, it's ultimately one of those situations where I think you got to, Mendoza certainly struggled at times, but so much of that was due to not having time to really react. Iowa was, and it was interesting because Iowa, they started to send more and more pressure as the game got further and further, because I think they thought that they could overwhelm Mendoza. But this is why, even though this was not as statistically impressive of a game by any stretch of the imagination as the last couple, this is why Fernando Mendoza is a Heisman candidate, maybe the Heisman favorite still, despite this game. Ultimately what you're dealing with here is a game that was much tougher than a lot of people thought it would be, myself included. But that was always a possibility when you consider that Iowa plays like this in Kinnick. This is how Iowa does things. And as much as if you listen to the post game or the pregame podcast I did with Taylor on Friday, you can go through and say, well, they've lost a couple of games in Kinnick here, about a game, maybe 2 games a year. Ultimately, Indiana had to find a way to fight through that, and Mendoza had to be the point of attack on it, because you can run against Iowa to a certain degree, but you weren't going to be able to impose your will physically on Iowa. And at some point, Mendoza was going to have to make the plays. And it's fortunate for Indiana that when he needed to, he was able to pull it together in the face of pressure. He made some big boy throws out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that throw that led to the field goal that tied it up. There was a big one there in the midst. There was the throw that he made to Surratt, not the one that led to not the touchdown throw, but the throw on the third down, that kind of intermediate post route that Surratt caught. I mean, the timing on those was just excellent. And it's a real testament, I think, to Fernando Mendoza that he was able to fight through all of that, have not a great game, have a lot of hits that he took, and was still able to figure out a way to pull out a victory. That's what a Heisman candidate quarterback does. And that's what an offense like Indiana right now that has all these skill position players, when a lot of that gets taken away from you, you've got to find a way to grit it out on the road. This was a very reminiscent of the Michigan game last year at home. Real similar vibe, where it just kind of felt like Indiana was in vapor lock to some degree for large portions of the game, but they figured out a way to make the plays at the very beginning and at the very end. And ultimately, that's winning time. Oftentimes, it's those margins, and that's what Iowa does too. They make you make those the winning plays in those circumstances. And so, even though I think there's going to be a lot to go back on the post-mortem and be critical of with Indiana, the reality is they did something that, as I said at the beginning of this, goes right against the DNA of the IU football program. This is not the kind of win that you normally pick up. This is a win that this Indiana team, this program right now, is able to pick up, and that's pretty special. As I sit here in the Kinnick press box, I'm still kind of shell-shocked at the way the thing finished off.
Yeah, well, and you talk about, difference in the DNA. For so many years, especially in the Kevin Wilson era, it felt like we were stuck in this, hey, our offense is good, but our defense sucks. Or our defense plays well, our offense can't get anything going. You look at that fourth quarter when the offense kind of started clicking and Mendoza really started making some of those throws. I look at, the defense, they give up a field goal, but then they get an interception, and then IU throws the interception, and, you're in danger zone, and they hold Iowa, 5-yard run, 0-yard run, incompletion, missed field goal. You only give up 3 points in the second half. I mean, it's you gave up 5, but that's not that was the refs not calling kneel downs. But you give up 3 points in the second half, 13 points overall. That's really good on the road against any Big Ten team for this defense. So I agree with you. I mean, the offense was awesome, but it's like the defense also stepped up in moments where if they didn't step up, this game was also lost. And there's just not a lot of times I've seen it where both the offense and the defense have both had their backs against the wall and both of them stood up and did what they had to do.
Yeah, it's as Patrick just pointed out, and I think it's an accurate thing. Other major programs like Ohio State, Michigan have gone into Iowa, had Iowa do this to them, and they've lost.
Yeah.
And I mean, as you said, it looked grim. Mendoza throws that interception, and Iowa's got them at their mercy. And a couple of things really stuck out. It wasn't just the defensive plays there on the 3 downs that set up the missed field goal. How about Curt Cignetti taking the timeouts when he took them?
Smart clock management.
Just incredibly good clock management. And I mean, I know Cignetti has occasionally gotten criticized a little bit for his utilization of timeouts, but that was expertly handled.
I mean, it ended with us getting the ball back with a 2-minute warning still.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty wild that it worked out that way. Let's go and do Recite the Drives. It's not going to be a pretty Recite the Drives, but Recite the Drives brought to you by Jeremy Barbuto of Ironhorn Enterprises. They buy commercial real estate, and they would like to buy your commercial real estate, hit up Jeremy Barbuto, 315-436-3872, or Jeremy at ironhornenterprises.com.
It's
Scott,
not Jeremy's fault that this is not as good as it was the Indiana State game.
correct. Yes, this will not be an evocative recite the drives. But Scott, Indiana, we're just going to go right through these. Touchdown, 2 plays, 24 yards, punt, turnover on downs after a 70-yard drive, and then a field goal to close out the half, which we're going to come back and talk about that one here, because that was another one of those marginal plays that made a huge difference down the stretch. Indiana in the second half, 7 plays, punt, 3 and out, punt, 7 plays, 33 yards, turnover on downs, 8 plays, 49 yards, field goal, 6 plays, 31 yards, interception, touchdown on a 5-play, 76-yard, 33-second drive, and then a 4-play, negative 49-yard drive to expire the game that ends up in a safety. I think the big thing you take away from this, and the way that Indiana struggled so much in the middle, is, as much as I know that Mike Shanahan and this offensive coaching staff are concerned about pass protection. We saw it against Ohio State. We saw it against Notre Dame. They really do seem to lean a little too conservative in these circumstances. And I think that ultimately there's got to be some other approach that they take. As good as the running attack tends to be, this is where that RPO approach and how married Indiana tends to be to it really seems to break down in games where they're playing against this type of a defensive line who can really body Indiana and create problems. But all of those bad drives that Indiana had, and you got to say, they didn't fall into even bigger holes than they could have. They really only had 1 punt return that went for any yardage. They were purposely punting it short because they'd rather take a 25 or 30-yard net and not give Weejan the opportunity to make a return. The biggest drives to me, obviously the one at the end, but that drive right before half, when they'd given up that field goal, they were down 10, or they're given the touchdown, we're down 10-7, and somehow moved the ball down the field enough that they got it tied at half. That was maybe the critical drive of the game, because it allowed them to go into halftime saying, all right, this thing is even. Yes, Iowa's even with us. And, but at that point, Iowa had kind of outplayed Indiana. So that felt like a critical juncture from an emotional and mental standpoint, because it allowed Indiana to basically kind of reset things and say, all right, now we got to dial this thing in. They didn't quite dial it in the second half, but at least it gave them an opportunity to hit the reset button.
Yeah, and I'll recite the drives for the defense, looking at the Iowa ones, but I think it tells an interesting story in that you go first quarter, interception 2 plays, punt 5 plays, field goal with 5 plays. In the second quarter, 12 plays, 6 minutes, punt, 11 plays, 5 minutes, touchdown. That's it. They had 2 in the second quarter. In the third quarter, I don't know where the hell the time went. 5-play punt, 2 minutes, 8-play punt, 4 minutes. And in the fourth quarter, you have a 5-play field goal, 6-play interception, 4-play missed field goal, and then 9 plays over on downs. And that's the end of the game. The thing that I look from that I find interesting is, outside of the 12-play and 11-play drives in the second quarter, all of those were like 5 or 6-play drives. Like they were only long because of the way Iowa plays, where they just drag these drives out. But it wasn't like, Iowa was doing a good job of not getting in third and long. They were in third and mid. They were getting those third down conversions. But you look at those drive numbers, like in the second half, it's 5 plays, 8 plays, 5 plays, 6 plays, 4 plays, 9 plays. So it's not, Iowa wasn't stacking these incredibly long drives. They were just controlling. It felt like the drives went on forever, but in retrospect, it wasn't, Indiana wasn't giving up 10+ play drives most during the game. It's just the drives were long, and they were having a hard time getting Iowa off the field on those third downs, but they were doing it normally in the second set of downs.
That wraps up Recite the Drives, brought to you by Jeremy Barbuto. Email Jeremy at ironhornenterprises.com if you've got commercial real estate to sell. And next time I'm going to make sure that banner drops a little bit. So, Jeremy, thank you. Great. We got a Recite the Drive sponsor, and life is good in Crimson Cast land, obviously. But as was pointed out in the comments, Patrick, I think, made a great point. Like, you can't underestimate how losing D'Angelo Pons for this game changed the way that the defense operated. This was a late breaking thing, apparently an injury late in the week. We didn't hear Curt Cignetti's comments, so I'm not exactly sure. He probably didn't shed a whole lot of light on it. That's concerning given how good D'Angelo Pons is. But even with that injury, I will say it's hard to find a lot of fault with the way the defense played. The defense was not put in a good spot at all in this game.
Right.
Iowa, 32 minutes and 42 seconds of possession. And, I mean, at the end of the day, you hold Iowa to 3 yards per rush on 31 attempts.
You hold them to 13 points. I mean, any road Big Ten game, you hold the team to 13 points. That's great.
Yeah. And so it's obviously something you want to see. Hopefully Pons is healthy and back for the Oregon game. At least you got an extra week to do that.
Extra weeks is definitely nice, especially with Mendoza's rug burn. Like the team is definitely, after an Iowa road game, they look beat up.
Yeah. But across the board, when I look at the way that this Indiana defense played, they look real tired in that third and fourth quarters because they were just constantly dealing with the physical aspects of Iowa's offensive line. But let's note that as good as Iowa's offensive line was built coming into this game, Iowa really struggled to make a lot of hay with that offensive line, and the defense deserves a ton of credit, especially the linebackers, and not to take anything away from the defensive line. But when I look at the play of the linebackers and the way that they handled things, Isaiah Jones and Aiden Fisher were, to me, just so key in this one. I don't know. We don't normally do offensive and defensive players of the game, but I would give mine to Isaiah Jones in this one, not just because
we're taking sponsors.
Yeah, we're taking sponsors, so hey, throw it in. But Isaiah Jones, it wasn't just the tip pass that led to the interception, but just the fact that he was able to make so many plays all over the place. And in a game where really a lot of the defense had to show out for the entirety of it and fight through fatigue and fight through some really effective blocking schemes and fight through a lot of Iowa-type plays, those throwbacks. I mean, the number of times that we saw the linebackers in particular sniff out screens was really, really impressive. And ultimately, I think when you look at the way that this defense performed, so much of it came back to this idea that they were bending a lot. They really only broke that one time, and it was on that touchdown drive that Iowa had. And the rest of the time, they kept giving the offense chances to figure things out. And that's how you're going to have to win some games. And as much as Indiana looked like the dominant team who was really hard to stop against Illinois, this is the rat poison stuff that Curt Cignetti talks about. This is where you go, and I was a little concerned about this. I didn't let it affect my guess on the game, and I probably should have. But when you get praised the way Indiana did, when you blow out a top 10 opponent, who, by the way, beat USC at home today.
I guess they don't suck.
Apparently, Illinois doesn't suck anymore. They only sucked last week.
Right.
And you're playing an Iowa team that, yes, doesn't have the top line offensive talent, but really, when do they have that top line offensive talent to be able to put yourself in a position by the way that you played through the first 58 minutes to get a drive in the last 2 minutes, and then to have your quarterback be able to make that throw and Elijah Surratt to break that tackle and run to daylight, and to do all of that without your All-American defensive back. I mean, this is the type of game that in the moment, I think there's a lot of recrimination because the play calling was too conservative, or they didn't make enough plays, or this or that. But folks, I mean, you watch enough college football, and we've watched a ton of college football over the years. Not only does Indiana normally lose this game, a ton of good teams, a ton of ranked teams lose games like this with that set of circumstances. I'm really, really impressed with Indiana's ability to come out and figure out a way to win this one.
No, I completely agree. And what's funny, I mean, I was going through a lot of the same feelings other people probably were too, but it's like, if you lose this game and you lose, let's just say Penn State and Oregon, like you're 9-3, that's a great season. Like, but can you imagine 3 years ago if I was like, Galen, we're going to go 9-3, you like take it. But everyone's freaking out because it's like, man, if you lose this game, on the flip side, it's like your chance at a college football playoff and Big Ten title are probably really hanging by a thread. And it's like, it's wild that we're at a point where that's something that like IU fans are disappointed about,
Yeah, I know. It's,
but I mean, it's good. I mean, it's a good thing. It means our expectations can rise.
You want to be disappointed sometimes. You want to be disappointed. You want to be like, wow, they should have played better. But to be able to say, well, they should have played better and they won is really, really great. Media availability is going on right now. I wanted to flash this up. Zach Osterman just tweeted it. What does a game like this show college football about IU's culture? Pat Coogan. It shows shit. Never daunted. True Hoosier right there. That's tremendous stuff. Couple other things I wanted to hit on in this game, and I probably wouldn't have brought this up if we were doing this in a loss. But my God, that was a terribly officiated football game. Good Lord. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. First of all, I'm in the press box here at Kinnick. I had no idea what was going on half the time. That might have been the worst communicated officiating I think I've ever seen in a major college football game. That half the time the ref had his belt pack on and you're just getting random chatter from the field. I still have no idea what happened on that play where Fernando Mendoza looked like he got hit out of bounds. Somebody they didn't give him the first down.
So they called it an offsides. So but like, which is weird.
What an offsides.
I don't know. I don't know how that was an offsides.
And you go back to the missed pass interference call on Omar Cooper early in the game, like 8 holds that just didn't get called on Iowa. Just random crap that didn't get called. And then the whole sequence at the end of the game with, Mendoza's not going down. There's, but the clock stops running. They're just automatic
the whistle. Like, I don't know why they're blowing the whistle. And then like, even in the post game, TV hit, Signetti's like, it's good win, all that. But he's like, I got to learn what victory, what did he call it? Victory, like penalties call. Like there's some term for it. Like somebody in the chat will get it. But it's like a victory pause or something. Cause it's like, he wasn't going down, but they were blowing the game. And you could tell they were confused. It's like, it's when the quarterback kneels.
Yeah. It's really not hard. I mean, you've watched football. I've watched football.
Victory delay. Thank you. Yeah. It was victory. I need to learn what victory delay is. Sorry.
Yeah. Victory delay. Yeah. So anyway, this is always a problem. We've been complaining about Big Ten officials and losses forever. It's nice to be able to complain about officials in a win.
Yeah.
But God, it was, this is one of those things. It's another thing you have to overcome when you're on the road at places like Iowa.
When this would have been a funny, with all of this nonsense at the end of the game with the calling the timeouts, which is also like bordering on Bush League, but whatever. And like the refs not letting him kneel. Like, I just always think of moments if you're in Vegas and you had bought this line at 5.5, which a lot of people did, I'm sure, middle of the game. And it's like, oh, I'm up 7. This is great. I got my win. And then like you see Mendoza running back. It's like, what are you like? Just go down. Don't take the safety. And part of me was like, I was nervous because whoever kid from Iowa was close. And I'm like, dude, don't fumble. And give it, like, just go down. But like those moments, you've been in Vegas, like those moments in Vegas are great when it's like people are just losing their minds because a lot of people lost a ton of money on that.
Yeah, it's 100%. It hit close to home. Football Weather co-host Matt Blaska got them at 6.5 and even texted about it as they were doing the victory formation. Oops. Sorry, Matt. But anyway, it's one of those deals where it's nice to be able to complain about something like that and not have it actually affect the win. And that's the most important thing. A couple other items to get to real quick as we look through the stats. Iowa ended up with 192 yards passing and 2 interceptions, kind of uncharacteristic for Iowa, where they did give Indiana just enough to beat themselves, which is something that Kurt Signetti said Iowa would not do. Ultimately 2 interceptions and a missed field goal feels very un-Iowa, but Indiana deserves credit because they forced both of those interceptions. That was not a situation where they were bad throws. That was pressure. And that's one of those things where you look at it and you say to yourself, this is what Indiana has to do to win a game like this. They have to make those types of plays, and they did in this case. And that's not something that we're used to saying or seeing with Indiana in games like this historically. And so it's nice that they were able to make that happen and put themselves in a position where they could make a play for themselves at the end. A couple other stats worth noting. As we mentioned, 3 yards per rush for Iowa, 2.7 yards per rush for Indiana, but that's got a huge asterisk on it, given that prior to Mendoza's 49-yard loss, Indiana was at 38 carries for 153 yards, which, all things considered, didn't feel that bad.
Right.
It felt like it was a lot worse than that. And, a couple other items worth noting. Iowa, Sam Phillips, 5 catches, 64 yards. Iowa had a fairly good game in terms of spreading the ball around. They really did try to put the ball in the air as much as possible. I think Indiana felt very dialed in against Iowa's running game early, and Iowa going to more of a passing attack did loosen Indiana's defense up just enough, but it really only hurt them on one drive. Everything else worked out fairly well.
I
Scott,
would say too, the other stat, we lost BB to injury last week. You had Kobe Martin, get a lot of stuff in the second half. It definitely looks like now when the rubber meets the road on these tough games, we have a two-headed running back core. You have Roman Hemby, Kalen Black are the leading rushers, 15 and 11 carries. Mendoza with 8 carries, but Omar Cooper Jr. with 1. There is no third running back, at least in this game. It looks like when it gets really tight, it's probably going to be just Hemby and Black.
And that's what you would expect,
Right.
and that's something that ultimately you well, I think you said it better than I could summarize it. So
that's a first. That's got to be once every 4 years.
I'm sitting here. I mean, they're emptying out Kinnick right now. It's pretty much done. I was shocked, to be honest with you. Like, there were Iowa fans like streaming out of the stadium after that Surratt touchdown. I was like, guys, it's a minute 34.
Yeah, you can score a touchdown, go for 2.
But I will say, like, Iowa fans in general were really down on their own team going into this game, and they showed out in a big way. It was very loud. It was a very intimidating environment. And look, Indiana shrunk from those moments on the road at Ohio State and Notre Dame last year. And those are more talented teams than this Iowa team was, but Iowa played well above their talent level in this one. The crowd helped a ton. There was a decent smattering of red. There was a nice section of red up in the corner over in 101, 102. There was some smattering of red elsewhere, but it was a fundamentally Iowa crowd, and Indiana deserves a lot of credit for coming up with the win in this.
The main takeaway that I have is,
sorry, apparently Mendoza, there was a crowd.
I saw this. Yeah.
I know I shouldn't be saying this, but I probably cooked people's spreads, and I apologize for that. But my job is to win the game. That's bravo. That's wonderful.
Well, dude, his TV hit afterwards, like he's running for president. It's great. He's like, I just want to thank the guys. Like, hey, we did a great job out there, but it's not just me, it's the guys. And it's like, wow, like Mendoza 2028 got my vote. To me, the concerning thing that I take away from this is just, again, in kind of these higher pressure games, if you look at Ohio State, Notre Dame, and then this one, the play calling just does seem to get conservative, and it doesn't always, that first drive felt like IU. That last drive to get the field goal at the end of the half felt like IU.
Yeah.
And you kind of started to feel it a little bit in the second, those last 2 or 3 drives, but the rest of it, it's just a lot of plays where it's like, oh, it doesn't look crisp. The runs are not great. Like you said, you're kind of making the wrong call. And you just worry about that going into Oregon and Penn State, where, can we bring some of that swagger into those games and kind of come into it with like an FU attitude? Because it does feel like we play these games a little bit more on our back heels.
And look, I would love to hear the comments from the coaching staff. I obviously haven't had a chance to see the availability. They're probably not going to give much up anyway. I'd love to hear the comments like in the coach's room. I'll say this. I think they were overly concerned about the pass protection, and they were trying, rather than go to a very short passing game, which I think they were worried that Iowa was going to jump. I think they were like, we're going to run it, and we're going to try to exploit it when we've got opportunities to throw. Unfortunately, those opportunities didn't unfold particularly well. The E.J. Williams pass down the right sideline was a really nice throw. They had Surratt open a couple of times on the boundary, especially in the second half, and they hit those, and that was good. I'm just surprised they didn't try to get the tight ends more involved. I'm surprised they didn't try to do more crossing routes. I think they were just largely concerned that Iowa was keying on the pass. They were trying to catch Iowa out. And again, like Hemby was running the ball at almost a 6-yard per carry clip. It's just that Iowa kept stopping them at a spot where it became disadvantageous for Indiana to try to run. So it is what it is. And we can obviously dissect this a bit more because there's a bye week coming up, but ultimately
much needed. Like, I'm not sure this team is ready for a game after this week.
Yeah. So it's really, I think, going to be key. Rest up. You get a chance to watch Oregon's also going to be on a bye. So both teams are going to be well rested, and both teams are going to scout each other, I think, really well out of all of this. But ultimately, what matters is that today Indiana won a game that I've seen them lose 100 times in my lifetime. And
we got the Kinnick thing off our back.
Yeah.
It's like Steve Young taking the monkey off his back for reference from the 90s.
First win at Kinnick since the George W. Bush administration.
Well, I think we got that 2001 loss out of our mouths.
You mean the 2021 loss?
Yeah, 2021.
Yes, I think so. So anyway, final thoughts before we wrap up here, Scott.
What's on the playlist for the drive home? No, it's a huge I'll let you finish with that. No, it's a huge win. I mean, this was, like I said, there was moments where it's like, man, this is, I think a lot of fans maybe got a little bit over their skis after that win against Iowa. Us too. And you kind of saw like, oh my God, this season, there was moments you were staring at it when Iowa is kicking a field goal. Or it's like they have that third down play where it's they get it first, they're just going to kneel and kick a 22-yard field goal. Where it's like, man, this could be a year where all the stuff we've talked about is going to go out the window now. But it didn't, and it's all still there. And this team on both sides of the ball stepped up on defense and on offense. And Mendoza, the stat line wasn't what it had been, but if you watch the game, he just made some unbelievable throws.
Yeah.
And then Surratt just made unbelievable routes to get open. I mean, he had some cuts and getting open, and then guys just not, I'll end with this. It's like so many times I've seen the Surratt play the other way, where we have a hand on a guy and he just breaks it and he's gone.
Yep.
It happened for us on offense, but so many times on defense, we had a hand on the guy from Iowa and then we brought him down. And that's just, I used to mention that all the time. It's like the first guy misses the tackle. It's like we need the third or fourth guy to tackle. It's like, it was great to see it on both sides where we're making that initial tackle. We're stopping guys when we touch them. And then the game is really, it's sealed on a play where we break a tackle.
Last two things, and it was mentioned earlier on when I agree. Nico Radicic, 2 clutch field goals down the stretch. Good God. No, I mean, and for a guy who I think that might have been his career long in that first one, I mean, yeah, it was a really good play by him. Second thing I'll say, and this was actually, it wasn't in the chat, but Pitt Hoosier had it. Curt Cignetti, 16-2 now as IU head coach.
Yeah.
My God. Anyway, Indiana wins 20-15 here at Kinnick Stadium. They go to 5-0 on the season. They go to a bye. Everything's still intact as they head into the, well, more or less the second half of the season, as they'll take a week off and then come back in Eugene in 2 weeks. We will go ahead and wrap things up. Scott, really appreciate you hopping on. Folks, it was a delight, a treat. Wish us luck driving back to Indiana tonight. Hopefully no problems coming back across Illinois and into the state of Indiana, but it'll be a fun ride back. I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, thanks to all of you for joining us here on this emergency live post-game podcast. First time in program history with 2 back-to-back 5-0 starts. It's a new era here for IU football as they pull one out 20-15. For Scott Caulfield, I'm Galen Clavio. We will catch you folks on the flip side. Stay never daunted. So long, everybody.